Okay. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Nilanjana from InLab, your host for this time round's winner circuit. Next slide, please. Welcome to this year's 2021 innovPlus Winners Circuit. Today's agenda is exciting. We hear from both the June as well as November round of winners. Last week, Monday, InLab held its 12th round of innovPlus Challenge, which, as you know, is an open innovation competition to spur innovative ideas to solve enterprise challenges in the learning and development field. Next slide, please. In the new normal that we are in, innovation and InnoPlus didn't stop. In fact, it magnified. Both June and November challenge runs exemplify this by the excellent ideas, pitches, and solutions brought forward. And on that end, a heartiest congratulations to all the participating teams and solutionists. The InnoPlus journey, which begins with matching challenge owners with solutionists and culminates with pitching, has several design thinking as well as pitch coaching workshops embedded in them too. This time round, InLab collaborated with Awaken Group to assist the challenge teams along their ideation and prototyping journey. These targeted workshops, we believe, help the teams refine their problem statements and even align their solutions to the needs of the user. The pitching session, as we may know, is a platform for the teams to pitch their idea proposals to a panel of evaluators. And each submission is then carefully evaluated on 5 broad criteria, ranging from concept, innovation, its impact, scalability, as well as its sustainability and implementation. Speaking of judges, the panel of evaluators for the June 2021 InnoPlus round were Mr. Alex Ng, Prof. Chia, and A. Prof. Ben Leong. For the November 2021 run, we had the pleasure of Ms. Georgina, Mr. Lee Vici, and Prof. Annabelle. InLab wishes to convey our deep appreciation to all the InnoPlus panel members for making the time to be with us and providing their insightful perspectives in evaluating the submissions. Now, let's take a look at the various challenge teams and the winners. For InnoPlus June 21, following were the teams that presented. All exemplified incredible resilience and fortitude in developing excellent proposals in these trying times. The 2 winners for this round were Challenge Team 1 and 2. For the November 2021 round as well, we had 6 challenge teams, and teams 2, 4, and 6 were the winners. Once again, congratulations to all the 12 InnoPlus 21 challenge teams for a great showing. Let us now hear from William, the Assistant Director of Innovation Center, an arm of IAL that looks into innovation. William has been a techpreneur and an associate faculty at the Singapore University of Social Sciences. He has more than 20 years of tacit experience in exploiting innovation and IP management in the built environment, as well as healthcare, manufacturing and retail, and even in education. He has sold the company, has licensed several IPRs, startup innovation centers, and even set up his own channel distributions in Asia. He has transformed innovation centers into P&Ls, then partnered with large overseas MNCs and venture capitalists for merger acquisitions and innovation acceleration. William has 7 IPRs and has commercialized his patented solutions outside of Singapore. With more than 24 publications and several innovation awards, he has also secured research grants of more than $10 million. His current interest is IP commercialization and music pedagogy. On this note, let's welcome Mr. William Fay to share about the innovation management opportunity to all participants and the IP exploitation experiences to the winners. I will now stop sharing and we welcome Mr. William to share his message.
Okay, very good afternoon to all. Thank you very much for attending this, and of course, thanks to Inlet and yourself for coming to this event. So here, I would like to take the opportunity to share with you some of the few slides. I call it my personal journey. And okay, this few slides will actually cover what is innovation and the habits of how to master that you may want to master it, and to be able to help you in some success. In innovations, it is important to understand how we define innovation. Innovation is the commercial exploitation of an idea. So basically, it's not just an idea. We need to do exploitation. So it includes generation, technology development, manufacturing, and marketing. So the output is definitely the new product or new services. And of course, we know there are many different types of innovation. Some of you may be in one of the few. So I will touch on there are in product innovation, process innovation, organizational innovation, and certainly learning innovation. So I will just get this statement that was out. This statement on definition of learning innovation is a change in the way learning is designed, developed, and delivered. So in doing so, it enhances the quality and accessibility of skills and knowledge acquisition, and therefore it is an important contributor to business viability and growth. So here tell us there are many definitions of many types of innovation, and then more important thing, what is learning innovation? And of course, we know the importance of innovations to meet rapid market change, because a company needs to change and we need to have new product or new services, and we want to be the market leader. Here, I will just skip this. This is to say that in innovation process, there are different roles that your organization may already have and play in the innovation system. This is a interesting slide that I hope it can resonate. Yes.
Sorry, William. I think for the slide itself, we are not really seeing the slide. What we are seeing right now, maybe you would need to refresh the slide sharing.
Oh,
because
okay.
We are, okay. That is the presentation mode as well. Can you?
Now, okay.
But you have to switch the display to the presentation mode. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, now it's good.
Okay. Sorry. So in that case, I'll just skip to the important one. So this slide actually shows you the type of innovation. So we have product innovation, process innovation, organization innovation, and the bottom left we have learning innovation. Learning innovation is the change in the way learning is designed, developed, and delivered. So here it therefore enhances the quality and accessibility of skills and knowledge acquisition. So take note again about this special definition of learning innovation. So these are the drivers for innovation. And the different roles that people can play in innovation: product champion, project leader. And more importantly, would be this slide. I would like to share some personal experience. So what is success? Here I put as we must be prepared to win. So over here you see a bow and of course an arrow into a dartboard. So here is interesting to say that take note is that the product is launched into a market and not the other way around. Also, basically, the product is launched into a market and it's not the other way around. Therefore, when we play the dart game, we throw the missile at the dartboard, not the other way around. Therefore, we also say we say this thing called technology push versus market pull. It is therefore important to understand why there is a need for this product in the market. And of course, in IC, we understand that if they have an innovation sandbox who can actually guide the TP into understanding this better. So take note is that the product is launched into a market, not that you develop product and then you try to find a market. And then the second point is on the side is important to be vibrant. Is basically is that this is the foundation. So here I want to say is that after so many years, being intelligent ourselves, people who are in the innovation sphere, being intelligent will be able to identify a few opportunities for us to open the window. Being brilliant means especially bright, be able to identify more windows will be open. But being vibrant itself in innovations here is quite cute, because in this case, opportunity will actually open for you. So to be vibrant means that we must be open to look for new ideas in things like the target application, similar application, and application with similar attribute. I think if you were to read today's Straits Times about the new skills, one of the key skills that they are looking is looking for technology application. So yeah, and then the third point that I would like to share with the team is on success and plan. So two of the tech words would be things like drown the puppies, or I call it match the message to the moment. So I think we know puppies are very cute, and of course, innovations. Puppies are like passion. You know, passion is important in innovation. Success is also definitely very important. Success is important, but passion for success can be toxic. One more time, success is important, but passion for success can be toxic. When there is a strong focus on success, and you hold on to the plan devotedly, very closely, and then still believing that it will work, it can be actually very crippling. So that is how I feel. I think all of us knows that a plan is simply, what is a plan? A plan is an exaggeration of what you think you can achieve, right? A plan, that is as good as a plan. If the pit stop, so-called a pit stop, is not fitting with the desired outcome, and then of course your passion still holds you on, and as a result, your project can actually suffer. So here on the right hand side, I would like to share was there is a interesting what we call it here is a garage work framework that actually provides some decision making process. So over here basically is that through the series of gates and stages and gates, so it forms a checklist whereby upon a certain gate, one would evaluate the performance very critically and then decide on whether the obstacles or the issues can be challenged, can be closed or not. So those three are just three of the I call it habits that I believe that if you may want to take that into considerations, it has helped me a lot, and I believe that it will help you in your innovation journey. Yeah. Okay, so I have actually finished. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, William, for your insightful words. And everyone here, if you want, you can please turn on your cameras so that you can look at each other. It doesn't have to be, you know, we're in the virtual world. We don't have to see nobody. Yes, it's just a meeting and we're here all celebrating successes. So without further much ado, we will now have the presentations from the five grant winning teams. Each pitch will be around 10 to 15 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of question and answers. So get ready, everyone, with your questions. I'll be prompting our speakers of the time in the Zoom message, and we'll have to like remind you at 20 minutes. So speakers, please keep your pitches short and crisp so that you have plenty of time for all the question and answers. And audience, please get ready to have your questions. Okay, so we begin with June 2021 innovPlus winners. Presenting first is Challenge Team 1, SingHealth Duke NUS with InMeet CMS Private Limited. Dr. Ewan, over to you, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share our project on this forum. And of course, thank you to the judges and organizers of innovPlus 2021. So I will share screen. Are you able to see my screen yet? No, not yet.
No, not yet. Yes, we can now see.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So our project is entitled An Immersive Learning Design for ENT Surgical Training and Assessment, integrating progressive learning with virtualization to enhance surgical training outcomes. A long title, but essentially, let me walk you through what we intend to do. The challenge owner involves some of us from Duke NUS, as well as members of the SIMS team, and also, of course, our technology solution provider from InMeet, Ms. Li Fong and Mr. Ivan Bu. So what we are going to quickly walk you through how ENT training is done. ENT stands for ear, nose, and throat, and it is a surgical specialty. And we work around in the area of the ear, nose, and throat, which is an area of very complex anatomy. And essentially, training, of course, revolves around the trainer and the trainees. And the trainees, we are talking about the residents who are aspiring surgeons, training or surgeons in training, and the trainers are, of course, the staff surgeons who are currently practicing. Right now, the problem with the complex anatomy of the ear, nose, and throat is that it is very hard for the learners to visualize the spatial relationship of the structures. And a very simple example is in the ear, where structures are microscopic and the relationships are complex. And during training, they really need to know how each structure is related to one another. Right now, the training really takes place from surgical atlases, videos, as well as pictures. And these, as we know, are two-dimensional. So the trainees have to do a bit of mental gymnastics to convert that into a three-dimensional visualization to understand the spatial relationship. And of course, it's also important to understand details and pathology that correlates with clinical anatomy. Is really, again, very hard to convert that from 2D to 3D, no matter how beautiful the pictures are. And on top of that, learning and practice opportunities are very limited because right now there are limited resources for the learners to practice. Right now, what they use are cadaveric bones and sometimes 3D printed bones, all these which needs equipment as well as a dedicated lab space. The paper that I've shown is really reflects this problem. All around the world, people are trying to 3D print bones in place of cadaveric bones. And not only that, rare cases and special cases learning are also very opportunistic, and trainees may not get to see many of those in their training. And of course, the long irregular work hours add to that problem. From the trainer's point of view, really, I've already verbalized how difficult it is for us to even help the learners to convert 2D to a 3D kind of thinking and visualization, and really also how to allow them to be self-directed and self-regulated, and at the same time allowing deliberate, repeated practice. And of course, we don't want the learners to encounter a special case or a rare case in the patient itself. We want them to be trained on it beforehand. Some of the examples are conditions in children or abnormal anatomy, and therefore opportunistic learning really is inadequate. Another big problem that trainers face is how do we track these learners' progress? Are they doing well? Are they achieving the competency milestones? Are they ready for progression or promotion? Are they ready for independent practice? And for those who are struggling and meeting problems, how do we individualize their learning plans and maybe institute remediation? So these are some of the problems that we encounter in a current training. And therefore, we actually started this journey of applying innovation to our training with a VR game. And we have devised a game for trainees to learn about the anatomy of the middle ear using VR glasses and so on. I'll quickly play through this video. It is a game whereby the learners put on the VR glasses and they're immersed in the external, middle, and inner ear. They look around, they name parts, they assemble parts, and in the process, we have got some feedback that it really helped them learn and enhance their spatial knowledge of the ear anatomy. But as you can see, the graphics are suboptimal. We will be the first to admit that. It is not easy to have very realistic and high resolution graphics. And so how we plan to address this problem is really using a simulation tool with an assessment module. So what we are going to do is really convert current 3D scans of the ear into current CT scans of the ear into 3D models and render them into a surgical scenario so that learners can then practice on virtual surgical scenarios. And together, using a progressive learning model, we can then chart their training progressively from basic to advanced and to even more difficult cases. Right now, there are some checklists for assessment, but these are all pen and paper kind of thing and really needs the assessor and the faculty to be present in order to assess the learners. So how we intend to go bypass that is, of course, as we have mentioned, an assessment module. I'll elaborate on that later on. But we also want to integrate haptic tools. These are all currently available commercially, although not very widely applied. What this haptic tool does is that it gives the learners a sensation of a real drill as they drill on the mastoid or the ear and give them that realism. So the most important thing actually is the assessment module, as I've mentioned, and all the individual learning tasks can all be captured and presented within a learning management system. And therefore, we can track each learner's learning individually and identify areas for improvement. So this is a summary of what we propose. Like I mentioned, converting CT scan into 3D models, fitting it into a software integrated with haptic tools, and of course, all at the same time, integrated with an assessment module. The benefit, of course, is to the trainees is that they get a lifelike, engaging training platform, and they can always do it on demand, and they get objective assessment rather than somebody with pen and paper hovering over them as they do the practice. And for the trainers, the benefit really is you get a higher quality of learning content for teaching, and it's really save you time. Of course, you can assess the learners objectively. And just to emphasize, the unique selling point of our innovation is not all the software and the rendering and the segmentation, but rather the assessment program where it's stacked and it is based on a progressive learning module and also adopting the approved assessment checklist that's currently used. And of course, we have a whole repository of CT scan that can be made into 3D models. So we are going to use a serious games design approach using all our domain experts and support from our technology solution providers, converting and segmenting all the CT scans that are necessary into 3D models, as well as engaging instructional design and technologies for data collection, assessment, design, and so on. And this is a summary of how we're going to implement. And finally, we will then establish this modular system, if you look at number 7, for subsequent users. So what is the impact of this proposed program? Essentially, I think the biggest impact will be on the hospital, and of course, ultimately to the patient. For the hospital, it's really about cost and resource saving. And just give you an example of how much training a resident costs per year. And if you look at that number, really comes out to about more than $500,000 a year. So if we are able to put it on a virtual platform, I think a lot of cost saving and resource savings will be realized. And really, I think there are intangible benefits from being able to retrain on special and rare cases. And all this will translate into reduced surgical errors and improve patient outcomes and safety. How do we plan to sustain this program? Really, we have no issues with the number of CT scans that are available for rendering. And of course, we have a centralized technology hub for improving this image processing. And we're going to train people to be able to create this competitive pricing into modular packages. Of course, Singapore enjoy a reputation as a medical education hub, and we should be able to export this to potential markets and interested parties in the future once this is successfully implemented. And of course, we plan to scale it up and across within the healthcare system. I think we are going to realize that immersive learning designs are going to be the new normal. And once it's adopted, this self-directed learning technology tool will be able to be applied across outside of ENT to many other specialties within healthcare. And if people find the value in this objective assessment tool, I hope it will become sort of a gold standard. And of course, like I mentioned, extend to other surgical practices. And finally, this can be scaled across and beyond healthcare into education, manufacturing, aerospace, and of course, pharmaceuticals. So with that, I thank you and look forward to sharing some of the question and answers. Thank you.
I was muted. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yuen, for your presentation. Any questions, audience? It seems to have tremendous amount of scalability. Okay. You can either unmute yourself or write in the chat, everyone. You can even message the team privately. Okay, if there are none, then maybe I have an anonymous question so we were just wondering, will there be a different or, are there any like upgraded scenarios to assess the level of understanding for these learners as well? Are you planning on those or?
You mean assessment of learning?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think what we are planning is also once this module or program is implemented, there will definitely be pre and post module assessment for the learners. This may take a form of either multiple choice questions or otherwise. But the most important thing, I think, is as the learners are using the platform, they are already being assessed. So their performance during that learning journey has already been captured. And as they keep repeating that module at another occasion, those can also be tracked and compared. So there is a sort of continuous tracking of their progression.
Okay.
I hope I answered that question.
Yes, yes. Also, I think doctors are very busy, right? So how do you ensure, how will this, will be ensured that the doctors have the time out of their busy schedule to use this?
Oh, it is a fantastic question. So what we are doing is main reason why we are targeting at residents at this point in time is to ensure that this module will be incorporated into their training curriculum. And so they may have no excuse not to do the learning. Because right now, especially during COVID times, we cannot even get cadaveric bones. And this will be the best so-called substitute, but we don't intend to substitute. But at this point in time, we can use this as a substitute for their training. So they will definitely be given ample time to make use of this module.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yuen, for sharing with us about the learning design for this ENT training and assessment.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Challenge Team 2, International SOS with Para-Atlas. And the project title is Project Wager. Over to you, Lynn.
Thank you. Give me a second while I share my screen. I'm going to stop your screen sharing. Can I confirm that the slides are in full screen to my team members, Leo and Lucas?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lynn. I represent actually International SOS. Together with me today, we have Leo as well as Lucas, who will give a background with regards to our project. So without further ado, I will pass on to Leo.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. So very good afternoon to everyone. I think it's a great honor to be here. And of course, also thank you for the judges who believe in our project and therefore we are here. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think just to give a little bit of background about International SOS. So who we are, we provide actionable insights and unparalleled services to support client populations, whether it's traveling populations or domestic workforces. So we are the world's leading health and security services company, and our purpose is quite straightforward, really, to help our clients save lives and protect their global workforce from a range of health and security threats, whether it's natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and things like that. So our partnership with organizations help them fulfill their duty of care responsibilities to their workforce while empowering their resilience, continuity, and sustainability agenda. Next slide, please. So helping our clients stay close to their people, if you just look at this map on the screen, you'll see that we have a global footprint. So our clients come from all over the world and they're operating all over the world. So we also put ourselves all over the world so that we can really offer that on the ground support to our clients. So we have 26 assistance centers worldwide, 5 regional security centers, and a global network of vetted providers so that we can really give that on the ground local knowledge as well as local assistance to our clients' workforces wherever they are in the world. Next slide, please. So some facts and figures for us. So we care for our clients in 1,000 locations in 90 countries. I wouldn't go through every single detail here, but just to flag out certain statistics. So you see that we carry out 7,900 medical and security evacuation and repatriation activities over the past year. We support even offshore installations and clients in very remote locations. Next slide, please. So I think hearing me speak is probably pretty boring. So maybe we'll just bring you through a video to really give you a better idea of what International SOS does. So I think the mission statement for our challenge team is this: to really build an interactive and immersive solution that instills health and security resilience within International SOS workforce enabling them to fulfill their roles to support themselves and our clients through crises and save lives. So basically, I think onboarding has always been a challenge because while the mission is straightforward, the work that's required to really support our clients across the health and security agenda is pretty complex. So I think it's always a challenge to onboard new employees and really get them to understand the model of our business and how to better support our clients. So I think leveraging on new technology, we want to come up with an interactive and immersive solution to enable us to have a more effective onboarding experience. Next slide, please. So preparedness in crisis management is really all about understanding roles and responsibilities and implications of decisions during critical times. So in this context, simulation is very important because if it's just a pure downloading session, like talking to employees during an onboarding session, bringing them through the crisis management theory, the learning points may not stick as strongly. But whereas if we know that gamification, I think, has been proven, and studies have shown that it is very effective in reinforcing learning points. When you have that kind of experiential learning, I think the lessons that you walk away with will stick with you a lot better. And that's really the impetus behind our project, to use technology to help us come up with a solution to accomplish that. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think now, again, to share another video for more of a background on our project. So I think I alluded to this earlier. So why simulation training? Compared to just a pure one-way downloading session, I think having a facilitator walk you through an actual simulated scenario will more effectively prepare the learners for varying crisis scenarios, openly discuss and cross-share experiences on crisis and promote that kind of teamwork, collaboration, and coordination. So I think right now I'll pass on the time to Lynn to take you through the next segment of our presentation.
So thank you, Leo. So as Leo alluded to, what this solution problem that we were trying to solve was the onboarding of our own employees to actually expose them really to managing a lot of these crises and in turn help our clients. So prior to the whole entire, I guess, international SOS generally became adopted blended learning since 2018, and we do actually have systems in place, which is sales learning platform, as well as e-learning, and we have been doing also face-to-face. Because of COVID, I think what happens is we had to accelerate the adoption of the blended learning formula, so focusing on the flipped classroom, whereby our learners are viewing lecture material not only on pre-recorded videos of e-learning prior to class, spending virtual time via Zooms and Teams, and engaging in exercises under the supervision of the facilitator. So we went not just because of the fact of the travel bans and as well as the ongoing challenges with regards to putting teams in place face-to-face to really run these tabletop exercises. We pivoted quite a lot of it into the virtual classroom. I wouldn't talk too much about the Kilpatrick model, but essentially what we noticed is with this is that there were challenges with regards to the fact that current methodology doesn't really support the learning outcomes that we want, and we were looking at something to try and kind of enhance our simulation exercises that were dealt with virtually. So I will show the next video, which actually shows you the challenges of simulation exercise, both on Zoom as well as prior to face-to-face. as highlighted in the video, I mean, with regards to Zoom, when we were trying to run tabletop exercises virtually, just want to check that you can still hear me because my screen froze a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So with regards to Zoom, I mean, what happens was there was compared to face-to-face, you had decreased interactivity and the content was condensed, as well as decreased effectiveness in meeting learning objectives purely on the fact that a lot of these tabletop exercises were derived based on the fact that you needed to do face-to-face, and because of the whole entire fact that we couldn't travel, you couldn't put the teams together, you had to use technology, and what happens is, the interactivity and the condensed content actually doesn't help us reach some of the objectives that we wanted. And what happens is, if you don't do actually good simulation exercise to train all your folks up, you do actually during an actual crisis, there will be mismanagement, there's business function losses, as well as because we're dealing with lives during a crisis, what's most important is actually the potential impact on the loss of lives. However, I mean, if you are looking at simulation exercises, even prior to COVID, prior to using Zoom as an interface, simulation exercises before COVID, where everybody was doing it face to face, also had its own challenges. Because what happens is, there were generally, when you bring the whole teams together, you have limited time. Usually tabletop exercises are done face to face previous to COVID. You also couldn't do a lot of the simulations with regards to the different scenarios, because when you bring people together, there's the cost of time in place, and we're talking about global teams here. So there's a cost of flying people in, taking them time away from their work, and so on and so forth. So there was the challenge of that. There was also very much is because facilitators managing all these simulation exercises. Facilitator differs from facilitator. It really depends on your facilitator experience. So very much is, there was no standardization to some extent. And I mean, there was standardization, but however, like experience counts. So what the learning outcomes are not generally standardized usually. So what we were looking for was, we wanted, based on the new world perspective, ability to give our people more interactions during simulations, like exposure to different scenarios more, so to increase the effectiveness of the learning outcomes. We wanted to put in more depicted consequences for learners' decisions. We wanted to make sure, because a lot of the tabletop exercises are quite subjective also, but we wanted to actually apply consequences that are both financial as well as basically business implications to it. So that was one of the things that we're thinking of. We wanted a wider variation of scenarios. We wanted to be able to build something that was customizable, that was both self-learning as well as customizable when you actually have wider teams. We wanted a way to objectively analyze each and everybody who actually were trained, and we wanted a framework to transfer the trainer's experience and kind of centralize it, so that we so-called crowdsource a lot of the good things that happened. So yeah. So what we felt that, like the biggest thing is running physical simulation exercises to aid preparedness has been a challenge since COVID-19, and is expected to continue to be a challenge moving forward as we actually maneuver out of this COVID situation. And we felt that the world need to reimagine the experience for learners and facilitators, as well as embrace carbon neutral solutions and sustainability while building resilience for our people. So because what happened was, there was no customizable simulation solution out there that meets the requirements of international SOS. As such, we were looking to build something internally. With that, I'll hand over the mic to Lucas.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Just go to the next slide. So the solution that we come up with have the following elements. First, it will be simulation-based, and second, it will be able to convert the facilitators' experiences into simpler, understandable forms. Third, the scenarios can be replayed again and again until the learner builds up their ability to more effectively tackle such new scenarios. Fourth, it will allow people to play together with added benefits, of course. And lastly, it will show a summary of the learner's playthrough in a page. Next slide. So firstly, the solution will bring learners through crisis situations. The learners will experience the effects of a crisis and will try to prepare and counter it with their team members. alongside the integration of real-world data from an international SOS database on their clients, the learner will be more involved and engaged with the simulation. Secondly, a framework will be developed to ensure a more realistic and impactful experience for the learner compared to existing solutions. We want to recreate the facilitator's experience into the solution and hit the behavioral changes level that is currently not being hit right now. Next, working through this solution with other learners will help to solve the lack of linked consequences among them. This feature introduces 5 different roles with 5 different sets of actions and consequences. Each learner's action will affect another learner, therefore making the solution so much more complex. The facilitators will then assist in reviewing the results of the learner's playthrough. Next slide. So next here is a summary of the actions that the learners will take for general scenario playthrough. First, they'll prepare for the crisis before the simulation starts. After the simulation has started, they wait for the first event to happen before obtaining enough information to make a decision. After making a decision, consequences as a result of their action will occur. This will be done over and over again for multiple events such as tsunamis, earthquakes, for all of these events that require action. At the end of the simulation, they will be sent back to the dashboard to see their scores. Next slide. The learner's dashboard will engage the learner by giving them objective metrics for improvement and badges for achievements. People are inherently competitive, and the learner dashboard with gamification in mind will be used to promote healthy and optimal usage of the solution. As a result, we will be able to simulate our software closer to reality compared to current solutions. So let me summarize what we've said until now with another short video. Okay, so here's a sneak peek of the user interface on the next slide. It shows the gameplay map, including some information such as live updates, possible actions, employee information, and lastly, the player information, all of which will provide useful data that will help the user make better decisions. And so that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, International SOS with Paratlas, for your rather insightful and immersive experience for us. Any questions, audience? Please turn on your mic or type it in the chat.
Hi. This is Wing here. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I do have a question. So for the simulations that you were sharing about just now, was wondering what kind of can you give us an example of what scenarios they are, and if how do you make it more, I guess, adaptive in a sense, because if they keep going through the same simulations, then there will be habituation. And if like in the single player mode versus the multiplayer mode, then how would the dynamics be different, or the training would be different, I guess? Yeah,
Yeah, so if you understand, so crisis management, it's all about preparation. So preparation comes in from an individual perspective, understanding what is crisis management and preparedness, all the way to team dynamics, whereby when you are actually in a crisis team, there will be various requirements, especially regardless of whether you're in a corporate environment or not, there will be actually actions that be it, let's say we take a corporate environment, you've got your HR, you've got your risk, you've got your chief medical officer and all that. So everyone will be playing a part. So as well as the final part of it, which is scenario play when it happens. So to answer your question is part one of the design was single player, which is just to educate someone with regards to being prepared about crisis management. What are the things, what are the consequences with regards to self-preparation? Then we throw in, of course, very much a multiplayer purely from a team perspective. Then if you notice what Lucas actually shared towards the end is a tiered approach, which is there will be phase 3, very much is where there's not self-play, but instructor-led, which gets to manipulate with regards to the scenarios. So the scenarios, I think single player and multiplayer at this point is set scenarios just to get people to understand, how they should react, what are the steps they should do, and what they should avoid. And this actually kind of drives in the key points. Some of the things include, like if you're stuck in an earthquake, or you're experiencing an earthquake and you're managing a team of people, one of the consideration you have to think about on safety concerns is where do you go after right after the earthquake and the movements behind that. So there's always implications that we want to bring home. And if you're a manager, what's the operational concerns that you have? So with regards to multiplayer as well as intervention after that, it's to allow facilitator to come in and tweak with it. It could be the timing of the tsunami, it could be timing of the earthquake, it could be like, let's just throw your whole entire team into multiple disasters happening at the same time, which can happen, which from a client perspective, it can happen. But for international SOS, we do see multiple things happening across the globe at any one time. So it's just to train our team now. I'll just pass over the mic to Leo, because Leo is actually more on the subject matter side, if he has anything else to add.
Yeah, thanks, Nia. I don't think I have much to add to that. But basically, I think set scenario. So at the start, it is probably predetermined more or less in that sense. But I think as Lin shared, in the later iterations, we are seeing that we can interject different scenarios to change things up. Basically, whether it's the intensity of the events that are happening or the type of adverse events that are happening. And I think for the different roles and responsibilities when it comes to a multiplayer mode, is to allow different players to take on different roles. So somebody could be like the HR manager, somebody could be like the security manager, and then so they'll figure out during the gameplay, how their roles and responsibilities fit together during crisis management.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wing, for asking a question, and thank you, International SOS. Okay, now we will, are there any questions? If no more further questions, please, you can either message the team directly, or otherwise, please take a short bio break, coffee break, grab your coffee, and we will see you back at 4. Thank you, everyone. Yay. Welcome back, everyone. That was a rather short break, but hopefully you could use the washroom or just grab a coffee. Okay, next we hear from November 2021 winners. And presenting first is Challenge Team 2, KK Women's and Children's Hospital with Major Studio. Over to you, Melinda, Cheryl, and Abhishek.
Hello, let me just share my screen. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, yep, Melinda, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We are a team of embryologists from KK Center and are collaborating with Major Studio to bring forth an educational innovation known as ICSI-verse, a solution to break down training barriers in a routinely performed procedure in our IVF center known as the ICSI technique. We hope that this innovation will pave the way forward in the future training of embryologists of tomorrow. A precious life begins when a sperm meets an egg. Are you aware that 8 million lives began in a dish? Infertility is an invisible plague that affects 1 in 7 couples globally, likewise in Singapore. Male infertility accounts for 50% of the overall infertility cases. With the evolution of intracytoplasmic sperm injection in 1991, this became a turning point for the treatment of severe male infertility. These couples now have a chance of having their own offspring, something which was almost impossible in the past. Today, ICSI has become an indispensable procedure in every center. KK Center is the largest fertility center in Singapore. We contribute to 1/3 of the cases performed in Singapore, of which ICSI is used 9 in 10 of every cycle. Now, where does the embryologist come in then? We are otherwise known as embryo sitters. We are highly trained scientists who play a crucial role in the chain of the ART cycle. We are the ones who are responsible for creating and nurturing the pre-implantation embryos, which can potentiate into babies. Now, on average, it takes 5 years to fully train an embryologist. Training is highly intensive and laborious, as every step of the ART procedure is perilous and requires immense concentration and precision. Hence, takes one's resilience to successfully complete the training. Therefore, very strict babysitting is required at every step of the training, not forgetting that concurrently, the heavy clinical load and other admin duties need to be completed as well. Due to limited availability of biomaterials and equipment, this can also result in delays in training. The ICSI procedure involves the operator to look through the inverted microscope at very high magnification, simultaneously using a pair of micromanipulators, one situated on the left and one on the right of the operator. The sperm is aspirated via an injection pipette and inserted into the egg, which is held by a holding suction. It requires lots of training in hand-eye coordination, visualization, while operating in a 3-dimensional space. Performing ICSI involves not just the mere science of it, there is also an art to injecting the egg. The embryologist has to bear several considerations in mind when carrying out the ICSI process, such as selecting the suitable egg and sperm to ensuring the injection is done seamlessly. This becomes daunting for all trainees who are learning ICSI, as they are consciously aware of being greatly responsible for creating future offspring, leading to very high mental stress. One is only deemed to have mastered ICSI when the injected egg is successfully fertilized. The following 2 slides describe the frustrations of the 2 personas, one of the trainer and the other of the trainee. Sherry is a principal embryologist of 15 years who is a trainer. And as you can see from the bubbles, she has to juggle not only work, but also family responsibilities. Ken, on the other hand, who is an assistant embryologist of 4 years, is a trainee at the final phase of his practical training to be a certified embryologist. And he has to find adequate time to practice ICSI daily, but encounters various roadblocks during his training. Now I'll hand over the time to my next presenter, Cheryl, who will share with you the solution overview.
Thanks, Melinda. Melinda has described the pain points encountered while training the trainee embryologists on ICSI. I shall now walk you through the current training process for ICSI, which is laborious and intensive. The trainee undergoes one-on-one coaching by the trainer on the job, and this happens depending on availability of time, biomaterial, ICSI equipment, and trainer's schedule. Learning ICSI occurs stage by stage and involves practices. Training first involves familiarization of the ICSI equipment, followed by training of hand-eye coordination, and finally, procedural mock practices, such as sperm catching and egg rolling. Practices are assessed manually based on direct observation and reporting by trainee on their learning journey and areas of improvement. Trainees' performance is again manually evaluated for next level of competency based on the Miller's Pyramid framework of assessment. Besides addressing the current pain points, we aim for the pedagogy of the solution to remain focused. The solution is to be interactive, multisensory, and able to evoke both cognitive and emotional responses, making learning enjoyable. The teaching approach is via active constructivist and experiential learning, where trainee is given the opportunity to construct mental models while learning. Assessments can be formative and summative, to be done during and end of the training to evaluate the trainee's competency level and readiness for reality ICSI. The learning objectives for the proposed solution include to reinforce procedural knowledge of operating the micro manipulators, such as moving the pipettes across the X, Y, and Z axis, and also to enable spatial thinking because ICSI is a multi-step process. And lastly, to enable spatial connection awareness for problem solving during ICSI. Upon completion of the training, we aim for the trainee to achieve the following learning outcomes. 1, to identify parts of the micro manipulator and types of pipettes used in ICSI. 2, to demonstrate proper hand-eye coordination using the solution to execute ICSI. And finally, to be able to repeat the action of performing the ICSI technique with the solution. Next, Abi shall present to you the proposed innovation, which we believe will address both the pain points and the pedagogy of learning ICSI. To you, Abi.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, so before I go on to the solution itself, just something about Major Studio. We were founded in 2016 and we have been focusing on emerging technology in content development such as AR, VR, and applied games. And we have provided customized cutting-edge technology solutions where we have worked with many businesses and the use of different technologies. And we have worked with various clients where we have used VR technology and also created many training technologies to help them train better and more effectively. So using VR as pain reliefs for Sherry and Ken. So why? So high accessibility. You're able to access the application anytime and anywhere. And all you need is your headset and in our case, we'll be using haptic gloves. Independent training. With the use of audio and visual cues, learners will be able to undergo modules on their own without the need of trainers. Bite-sized learning. So modules will be broken up into segments so that learners can do self-reflection before proceeding to the next module or attempting the previous module again. This also prevents learners from learning fatigue. As you've heard before, that one training session can take up to an hour. Safe environment. Since everything is in a virtual setting, there's no risk of damaging equipment or wastage of biological materials. Learners are allowed to make mistakes to inculcate experiential learning. An easy setup. With everything that is required in the virtual environment, the only setup required is for you to put on your hardware. And of course, scalability. More modules can be added to meet the needs of other departments or institutes in KKH or outside of KKH. The new envision process, and this is how we want to improve the current training modality. So at the start of VR simulation, where there'll be the flexibility to train anytime and any place through 3 modes, which I'll elaborate later. Perform the VR in ICSI, so unlimited practice with no need of actual equipment and biological material. Having immediate feedback eliminates the need for a trainer to be present physically. And assessment and data collection, where trainee is able to validate their own performance before they can actually go into the practice mode for the next stage. And analysis, where trainers can check on the progress and performance of the trainee and deem whether an intervention is required. So the ICSI pedagogical design. So this is the key concept of our feature. So we have a guided practice assessment mode, where you learn, practice, and assess. And then we review using the dashboard. So how does this relate back to our pedagogical design? So the learner's orientation, where independent exploration, where different types of training engage in active learning and construction of mental models. Skills and engagement, where you, through spatial thinking, spatial cognition, awareness, and observation skills, the use of multiple senses, and analytics and personalization. Instant feedback and achievement provides haptic responses and instant feedbacks to trainees and also trainers with key insights on trainees' progress and performance. Now, addressing back to the pain points that KK is actually facing. So a learning management system creates capacity, eliminates the need for a trainer to be present, and coaching is done through a virtual simulation, through spatial audio, like I mentioned. Virtual reality and simulations, you reduce the training duration. Trainee can clock in training hours without the need to wait for resources to be available. Now imagine if you have such a solution in your workspace, you don't really need to wait for a trainer to be available or biological materials or equipment. You can train once you have available slots. And gamification, because it can be a very stressful environment to train on new equipment like I tried in KK. I was actually quite stressed out using the equipment myself. So if it's in a virtual platform and you introduce elements of gamification and fun, you're actually in a risk-free environment where they will not need to worry about damaging equipment, and they can also, learning can be fun, right? And that's what we're trying to achieve here. So a brief user flow. So for the learner's point of view, they'll put on their VR goggles and their haptic gloves and they will log in, where they will be faced with various module selection. So one in this case will be ICSI, but we can scale it up to different modules like cell manipulation or cell biopsy. And then they go to the mode selection, where they choose whether they want it to be a guided practice or assessment mode. And if they choose guided mode, they will go through spatial audio, and there will be lots of visual cues for them to actually run through the entire process through the SOP that KKH, the IVF Center has implemented. If they decide to do a practice, there will not be any visual cues, so they get to practice again and again before they actually go to the assessment where they are graded. And all this information goes into the web dashboard, whether it's guided, practice, or assessment, where the trainer can actually log in and access this web dashboard through their mobile phones or their desktop. So they have this information on the go, and they can see their trainees' progress. And what this helps is, they can decide whether an intervention is required or whether the learner is actually ready for the next phase of their training. So of course, there is competition out there, and there was the world's first IVF virtual reality software for ICSI training, where they have actually most of the features that I've actually already mentioned. So how are we different? We have the assessment mode, where I think is an integral part. Every time you do a training, you want to see how far you have progressed. So an assessment mode is necessary, which our solution will cover. Haptic gloves. Now using VR controllers, it's already been out there. But what haptic gloves does is it gives you the touch and feel of the micro manipulators, which is quite sensitive. And of course, data analytics. With data analytics and all this information that you get, you can actually provide key insights on how the trainees are progressing, whether you want to provide an intervention or whether you think that the module out there is actually good enough, and then improvements can be made along the way. So in 2019, VR technology helped cut down Boeing's training by 75%. Now imagine if this was applied to ICSI, but we're only looking at a 50% reduction without compromising the number of practices. And from 9 months for this few training process, I'm just going to take the trainee one as an example. You can reduce the training duration to about 4.5 months without compromising the number of practices and training that he has to go through. So you maintain the competency level, but you do it in a faster time frame. And for scalability, so the global micromanipulation market can be divided into hospitals, manufacturers, and specialty clinics, and others. So the market size is huge. And of course, this is being used mostly in the cell manipulation department. There are other areas where this is being used as well. for example, semiconductors, which is actually taking such a high place in the market these days. And micromanipulators are a common factor here, which can be used then to provide training for them as well. So that's why we think that the scalability of this is quite large, because the micromanipulators is not something that's just used for cell manipulation or for embryologists. So how do we reach out and creating and developing a business? Now we will have partnerships with IVF clinics locally and internationally, looking at the market size of embryologists, universities and training. So right now the current mode is, after they've gone through their course, they go into the lab and then they start their training. So if we could provide the training in the universities itself to get them familiarized with the entire process, once they come into the lab, we can actually shorten the process that's required for them to start the ICSI procedures itself. Then of course, IVF manufacturers and distributors who can use this to promote their equipment and bring it forward. So next up, I'll hand over to Melinda, who will actually conclude the presentation. Melinda, over to you.
Thank you, RB. So with increasing numbers of tech-savvy young adults who are joining the field, we see this as a great and timely opportunity to transform this part of the training by creating an innovative virtual space for the trainees to train in. And expected outcomes will be as follows: to have a standardized VR training regime to ease the burden to our heavy workload, to have decreased reliance of an actual trainer, to have increased overall free time, and to eliminate the need of biomaterials and equipment. ICSIverse will benefit many areas. Training will be reduced by at least 50%, translating to faster training and the ability to train more trainees simultaneously. At the same time, it frees up the trainer's time to focus on other clinical work or administrative commitments by at least 80% time savings. All this added up together can lead to an optimal increase in clinical workload, translating to potential increase in revenue and increased man-hour savings for KKH. Patients can expect to experience reduced waiting time for a cycle as a result of this. Hence, more couples can benefit from this. Having said that, staff satisfaction is of utmost importance to us. As you can see, current method of training is both time-consuming, laborious, and lack of consistency. Hence, the urgent need to future-proof the standard of training to suit our personas' needs. With the changing demands of the younger generation of embryologists, it is imperative to use innovative methods to modernize the way of training to keep it sustainable. And we are very glad to be given this opportunity to make this change today for the future training of the embryologists of tomorrow. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Question and answers time.
Okay, thank you, team, for your rather intuitive presentation. Any questions from the floor? Hello, anyone?
Hi.
Yes,
William
William.
here. Yeah, I just have something maybe to check. Okay, the ICSI procedure is fantastic, but just wondering, if I were to compare ICSI with IVF, we know that IVF has a higher chances of success compared to ICSI. And then I was wondering is how are you going to have this market whereby I mean, if IVF is going to have high success, why would people still want to choose ICSI? And then that is the first question. Then the second one is when I will look into the ICSI process whereby you actually inject in the sperm into the egg, I am sure that there would be complication in the procedure. And this complication means that there's probably certain learning that is important so as not to damage the egg. Yeah. Would this learning be actually, has it been incorporated, especially the final aspects? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you for your question. So just to clarify, in the IVF center, right, we perform both IVF ICSI, and ICSI is actually performed in 90% of the cases.
Okay.
Yeah. So IVF is also performed, but the thing is that because there are certain group of patients who cannot take the IVF process, because IVF process is a process where the sperm is put near to the egg and to get fertilization. So if, let's say, couples have been infertile for many, many years, one of the reasons that could be stopping this success is because there is some penetration issues between the egg and the sperm. And hence, ICSI is actually predominantly performed as the sperm is directly injected into the egg to aid in fertilization. Yeah. So as for the second question, the challenge form that we have is actually to cater only to the first part of our ICSI training. So the ICSI training is a very, very long process. And we do acknowledge that the virtual training is only going to cover the first segment of our training and not the entire ICSI training. Yeah, so because when the trainee is very new and we give them a clinical equipment to work on, so it adds on to their stress level. And as Arbi would have explained to you just now, when we actually let him come into our lab and had first-hand experience to the equipment, even an avid gamer or, you know, someone who is very good with hand-eye coordination will feel very daunting operating on a very expensive clinical equipment like this. Yeah, so, and that is why we hope that the training of this kind, you see, even just learning how to operate the micro manipulators, right? As Arbi has showed you just now, it takes about 9 months, 6 to 9 months just to learn that segment of the training. This is not the entire ICSI training. Yeah. So to shorten that amount of time, then these people, once they get very comfortable with operating their left hand, right hand, and their eye coordination, then they will move on to the actual usage of the equipment. Yeah. So I hope I answered your question.
Wow, that's a lot of time saving. Thank you, team. Thank you for this. In fact, the innovative technology and the solution and the innovative learning approach. Okay, next up coming is Challenge Team 4, Singapore General Hospital with Playware Studio for their project, Skin Knowledge via Innovative Nurturing Skin at Go Prime. Dr. O, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me, Mila?
Yes.
Thank you. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. So thanks everyone again for staying for this session. And that was really a very nice session from the KKH team. I learned a lot about this technology, and I didn't know that VR can be a next step forward, which is very nice to know. So again, my team is also about healthcare, but definitely not as extensively precious as ICSI, but nonetheless, it's also a pressing healthcare issue. So I'm Dr. O, I'm from Singapore General Hospital, I'm a dermatologist. I'm the challenge owner for this round for November challenge. And my solution provider is Mr. Sid from Playware. Unfortunately, my solution providers can't be around today, so I will share the whole presentation on his behalf. Okay. So we know healthcare in Singapore is world-renowned. Consistently, you know, for example, SGH has been ranked in the top 10 around the world, and that brings a lot of patient load from Singapore and regionally, even pre-COVID and during COVID, patients like to come to Singapore for healthcare. This is not surprising. For example, you look at the healthcare structure, SingHealth, like KK Hospital earlier, and ourselves, we are from the SingHealth clusters, and we cover largely countrywide with majorities in primary, tertiary, and secondary care. The key burden in healthcare, fertility is one we mentioned earlier. Secondly is aging population. You can see that year 2000, 1 in every 14 adults are elderly. And if you go down the years, the ratio of adults supporting elderly ratio is going to get shorter and shorter. In the next 10 years, for every 4 adults, you have 1 elderly. And this is an issue because with elderly issues arises, multiple healthcare issues arises, such as need to see for heart condition, lung condition, eye condition, multiple conditions. And this actually clogs up the healthcare system in terms of waiting time to see a specialist. This also prompted our Health Minister, Mr. Ong, to stress to the citizens that we have to relook healthcare structures. Perhaps not everything should be pigeonholed to the tertiary care. Perhaps we can shift care towards the primary care and community care. That can also save time and costs. What are the angst our patients face with these current challenges? Waiting times to see a GP is variable. You can see a GP if you go early, if you wait at 7 a.m., you can see the doctor by 9 o'clock. But you know, if you go in the afternoon, you may end up seeing the doctor rarely in the afternoon. And then we have a problem that the primary clinic doctors cannot solve for you, you will get a referral letter. And the angst comes on depending on which specialties you need to see. For example, to see an eye doctor may take you 2 months, to see a pediatrician may take you 1 month, and to see a skin doctor at present may take you up to 3 to 6 months. Example, if you're a patient and you, in the middle of the night, you notice a mole on your skin and you wonder really whether this is a melanoma or something that you can leave alone. You wake up, you go to see a GP, and the GP says, I'm actually not very sure. Let's get to see a skin specialist. And then the letter comes and you go home, you wait for the appointment, and the appointment doesn't come. And then 1 week later, you say, oh, it's actually in 3 months' time. This actually builds a lot of angst for the patients because it's a waiting game. Every day of wait is every day of fear. Why we chose the skin? The skin is the largest organ you can find in your body. It encompasses your hair, your face, your neck, your trunk, your groin, even to your finger and toenail. So the skin is all encompassing, which means the skin burn is very high. And because your patients can see every part of their skin when they wake up, look in the mirror, their partner look at them, the kids look at them, you have a new spot, you have a new rash, what is this? This is a result of a skin cancer study I did earlier this year. The skin cancer is also rising in Singapore. We can notice that amongst the Chinese, Malays, and Indians, skin cancer is on the rise, partly because of 2 major factors. We are in a tropical area with sunlight, and number 2, we are aging population. This is the waiting time to see specialists, and to see a skin specialist in Singapore is consistently one of the top 5 longest waiting time. So let's take a look at this. This is a typical lesion you might find your grandma or grandpa or your uncle next week when you visit them. There's something on the forehead. And then there's a lesion you notice on your uncle the 2 weeks later. And then you really wonder which of these 2 are really worrisome. Because one is large, very large, and looks a bit worrisome. One is actually quite small to the nose, but there's a little ulceration. So the larger doesn't always mean it's cancerous. This is a seborrheic keratosis, which is an oily gland spot we can see over with aging time. And this is small but sinister because it's a basal cell cancer, which can go undetected. Again, if you look at these 4, which one will worry you? 1, 2, 3, and 4. For the interest of time, we will be very concerned with number 2 and number 3 because they are fairly big and they are heterogeneous in color. You can see they're not uniformly brown and they're very odd shape. These are clues that these are skin cancers, in particular melanoma. What's the challenge now? We know that tertiary care, for example, seeing a skin specialist can be found in many tertiary hospitals, and this supports the regional primary care polyclinics and GPs. And this is how the system works in Singapore, the hub-and-spoke model. But we know that with aging population, there'll be more and more demands from the primary care to see a specialist, and is building more and more hospitals. The answer for healthcare in Singapore, this might not be the best way to go because it's very costly to train, to build a new structure. And then you can see from the earlier team presentation from KK, training a specialist, be it embryologist or any specialist, takes many years. The training time is not enough to catch up with the demand that's evolving every day. So our proposed solution for a challenge is there's increased amount of skin needs in the population because of old people, young people, even children. And can the primary care doctors help us? Can there be a link between primary care doctors, the patient, and us specialists such that there's a shorter waiting time? This is the ecosystem we envision. The patient is the center of all our concerns. They will always, most patients will love to see the GP because a practitioner below my house or next to my office is always the most convenient. There's no appointment to make, I just walk in. And then when there's a skin issue, for example, there's a mole, you need to see a specialist. How can I get to see a skin consult at the quickest time? So we envision that training a specialist for example, using a case I learned earlier, it takes 5 years to train an embryologist. So to train a skin specialist takes another 5 years as well. So it's not very feasible to keep training so many skin specialists. However, the ratio of a GP to a specialist in Singapore is perhaps for one skin specialist, there are 10 GPs. So we tied up with Playware, the solution provider company, to find a way to innovatively teach GPs how to pick up very common skin cancers or skin diseases in Singapore with the use of an app. This will be partnered with SingHealth and Playware as a solution provider. And we're very lucky that innovPlus has selected us as one of the winners this round. We're really grateful to bring the gap between them much closer. This will also be tied with a partnership with Singapore Medical Council, industries such as pharmaceuticals and development companies. So this is the requirements that we want our solution provider, Mr. Seeds and Playware, to offer. The training must be convenient to the GPs. It must be bite-sized information such that they can understand what's going on. It must be, we also thought of gamification so that playing some sort of games to entice them to continue working on solutions and learning the tool. It must be practical to them on a daily practice. And it must be really authentic, meaning that what they see in the app is really reflective of what we see in Singapore daily practice skin problems. So the solution also will help to entice or encourage GPs to do it because it also contribute to their compulsory medical education points, which they must clock out every year. By doing this app, they can earn points. This solution proposed by my solution partner has also the advantage of a virtual Berlin's group. Berlin's group is a concept coined by the British general practitioners in the 1960s and 70s. What we feel that actually in healthcare, a lot of times the learning is not through such simply as through an app or through a video recording. There's actually thought processing going on because sometimes cases that you see are unique to you in your clinic that's not seen around the world. You have no prior experience. And sometimes you want to just talk through a case with another human to discuss the challenges, for example, the rash itself or the emotional challenges in explaining the condition and providing bedside care for the patient. So this platform app can also allow for a virtual group where the GPs share their learning process as well as a trainer, a dermatologist inside to be the overall moderator. There will also be a virtual bedside round. Our mode of learning in healthcare has always been see one, do one, and teach one. In the old days, it's always the old physician teaching a young physician daily at the bedside. This is a liver, this is a cirrhosis, this is a heart, this is a lung cancer. And unfortunately, now in COVID, this has to be cut down because of safety for both the doctors and the patients. So we are really cut down on the human interaction. But we want to bring this back by doing it virtually, meaning that we will use this app to bring out rash that the GPs commonly see or cases that they see in the clinic that they really have concerns with. We will share it in the virtually, and then we will do a discussion in a small group, and then we discuss, and then we can learn from everyone. This is also very current. As mentioned, what will entice the GPs to continue learning will be this will be added to their CME points, which they have to clock out every year anyway. So it's good for our learning. We also do assessment throughout thorough assessment throughout this whole gaming process to make sure that they learn the common skin disease along the way. What's the potential of this? We know that skin is, as I mentioned, is so visual from the hair to the skin to the nails. So a lot of patients do take photos of their rash and WhatsApp everyone. Sometimes they WhatsApp to friends or colleagues who then WhatsApp the doctors to see. So we will have agreement that to have PDP will be arranged such that these images are collected over the years, and then we know that AI is something that is constantly talked about for healthcare in the future. So we hope that over the years through this app, where we collect enough clinical photos, we can build an app to use AI to help humans to detect lesions that are cancerous or not in the Asian skin. The potential impact is multifold. For the patient, of course, the ends is lost because you get to see a GP. GPs get get to be empowered to give a skin diagnosis because they have learned the condition well enough to detect common benign and malignant skin condition. It saves the time from a specialist and cost to see a specialist. The GPs get to practice and learn. There's a lifelong learning. There's a learning support from a mentor, and there's community support as well from the app. For the healthcare system in Singapore, if the right citing of non-dangerous cases can be seen in GP and not referred up to the specialist, and then overall, it can lower the healthcare costs as well. Finally, how can we make it scalable? We will pilot this in Singapore General. This can be piloted in other hospitals with skin support. This can also be extrapolated to other organs other than skin, such as the ear, nose, and throat, and the eyes. We can also offer to other allied healthcare professionals for learning, such as the therapies as well. This can be commercialized in the future where the users pay a small subscription rate to continue using the app. Sorry. And finally, we hope that using this Go Prime app to teach the physician how to detect skin conditions early, we can really reduce the need for the patients to see a skin specialist at a quicker time. And that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. O. This is indeed a smart way, I would call it, to detect cancers and train up people, where you can use images already that are existing in people's phones. Yeah, and then maybe use AI
in the future.
So,
that's right, that's right.
Yes, excellent. I think Facebook, you'll be now soon competing with Facebook.
Google, yeah, Google is going to launch an app like that.
Yes. Okay. Anyone has questions? Please to ask.
Hi, Dr. O. I just have a question over here. You mentioned that just now what you have is collecting the Asian skin data in the future. But currently, how are you all going to collect it in order to build this project up? Because definitely you need all this information to be collected to be relevant, especially in Asia, where there's in Singapore there's so many different race and skin tone itself.
Yes. So the current gap is apps like this, as you mentioned earlier, like Google and Facebook have designed this, but they are largely targeted at the Caucasian population, where their skin cancer burden is much higher. But as we show in our slide, skin cancer is also not low because of Asian population. But there's the apps at this present has a lack of Asian skin. So in our healthcare structure, doctors among doctors, we have our own sort of WhatsApp app, the texting material, which is intrinsically within healthcare institutions where photos can be sent. So what we'll do for this project and other projects we have is the patient will sign an agreement to share the photos through our healthcare app, and they will upload these photos with the agreement and to store it for their future use.
I see.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? Anyone? Interestingly, a couple of years ago, I had read an article about that even darker, like you mentioned, Dr. O, that even darker skinned toned people are at an equal risk of skin cancers, and and especially since the ozone layer is now thinning. So here's hoping our GPs can be quickly trained up. And
yes, that's right. Would you, in your experience, is going to GP more convenient than waiting to see a specialist for?
Yeah, I think yes. Yes, it's just down there.
That's why make it easy and fast for everyone. Yeah.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, I recall in Australia when I was visiting, the GPs there were on these lines. I think they would just do some tests and all, but they would just take note of such weird moles, they call it, or these black marks.
Yeah, absolutely right. Australia is well known as the skin cancer capital of the world, primarily because they are very fair, originating from Europe, and they simply love to suntan. So it's two dramatic risk factors that they don't really change their lifestyle. So because the burden is so high in Australia, all GPs have been trained to use apps to detect skin cancer, because a delay can mean lifespan shortened by many years. The delay detection melanoma. So in Australia, the alertness level is very, very high. Yes. Yeah. We envision Singapore, the burden won't be so high, but we might reach a level where the elderly population will pose a challenge to us. Yes.
Yes, you're right. I think even in advertisements, on television advertisements, they are just talking about melanoma.
Yeah.
Yes.
It can kill if it's not detected early. Yes, that's right.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rowe.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay, next coming up is Challenge Team 6, Social Service Institute, and Visionary Schoolman for their project SSIX.
Yep. Hi everyone. We are Challenge Team 6. I'm Lionel from Social Service Institute, and our team is made up of Social Service Institute and Visionary Schoolman. So I'll be representing SSI today, and Vinda will be representing VSM. Are we supposed to start from this slide, Vinda?
Sorry, no. Definitely not this slide.
Okay.
Okay, but it's good that you can see the slides, right?
Yeah, right, great. Okay. So, all right, let us begin. Okay, so meet Alice. She's a social service professional. I'll be sharing with you a case she's handling. Alice has been counseling Jane, a housewife. Jane is in an abusive relationship with her husband, Henry, for the last 3 years. So he threatens and he beats her. They have 2 young children, and she escaped with her kids once to move into her sister May's apartment for a few days. However, she was forced to return home due to Henry's demands. When Henry found out May had borrowed $1,200 from Jane, he again raised his hands and beat Jane. May had asked for more money and Jane refused. Because of this, May had threatened not to allow Jane to move into her apartment if she ever decides to leave home again. This leaves Jane in a dilemma, all right? So, okay, why does this matter? Why does the work of social service professionals do matter? Well, they simply provide help to the vulnerable in case of domestic violence. They are key to helping their client escape the environment. Okay, they work in highly stressful and high environment, which are often dynamic and evolving. So what starts off a domestic violence issues may evolve to include issues such as financial difficulties and relationship problems. So they also need to be highly competent and quick to adapt, as cases change minute to minute, and they have to make adjustments on the fly. In this case, Alice needs to assist Jane with domestic violence issues, as well as her relationship with May, her sister. She also needs to apply different proficiencies to handle these 2 issues, and also how both issues play into each other. Hence, Alice's ability to maintain credibility and rapport with Jane is also dependent on Alice's ability to adapt and navigate the case with her skills. All right, so we recognize that social service professionals need to be highly skilled, but what challenges do they face in acquiring these skills so that they can effectively help their clients? Through work and surveys, we understand the evolving nature of cases these professionals handle tend to surface gaps in their competencies. Okay, these gaps then prove costly in the real world, and there's great urgency to close them. Now, even if these skills gaps are identified, there are challenges in ensuring effective transference of skills and knowledge, as they are highly contextual. This is the last mile delivery problem of learning transference. Essentially, acquisition of skills and knowledge to address these gaps suffer from ineffective learning interventions that are slow, highly inaccessible, and lack precision. There's a drop-off between skills and that are identified as gaps to the skills being acquired. Now, it's no surprise that skills gaps are widening, and the time it takes to close them is lengthening. In a survey done by IBM between 2014 and 2018, the time to close skills gaps increased by more than a factor of 10. Okay, and in our industry, social service, 90% of practitioners report skills gaps in stakeholders management, for example. So why is it so hard to close these skills gaps? Well, first, it takes a long time to to observe and identify these gaps, and the time it takes to create appropriate interventions, address them. Gaps are also identified long after they are surfaced at work. Employees essentially are left without adequate instructions to close their skills gaps when in the field. Second, skills gaps are hard to recreate in an academic setting, and as they are often highly contextualized. Third, these gaps may be identified, but current solutions suffer from the last mile delivery problem. Effective learning and application of identified skills depend heavily on the ability to recreate situations in which they were identified. Additionally, these gaps may also manifest itself differently for different individuals. So last but not least, there is a bottleneck in having experts address these skills gaps. Learners often identify the skills gap required, or they just simply do not know what they do not know. So identifying and diagnosing them in relation to training gaps often requires knowledge in instructional and assessment design, as well as knowing the conditions on the ground. Such competencies are rare in a person. If a learning product development is left to this small group of experts, solutions that seek to address this skills gap would only be ready long after they are needed. All right, here's the process for the flow for the development of learning content. To surface and identify skills gaps, normally a training gap analysis is first performed, and then with the data gathered, an instruction update or instruction assessment is then done. And then after that, the entire process would be to create all this content, and a new curriculum would then be delivered either in classrooms or activities or e-learning. So depending on the complexity of the curriculum, this process can take anywhere between 2 months to a year. So depending on the interactivity, of course, and the delivery mode. The current model makes it virtually impossible to address the skills gap effectively. A solution is needed to address this problem. Okay, so now I'll hand this over to Alvinda for him to speak in depth of the solution that we are offering.
Thanks, Lionel. So Lionel has walked you through the lengthy and resource-intensive process of learning content development and how, despite all investments made into the current interventions, they are still deemed ineffective. If we seek to address the skills and proficiency gaps, learning and assessment will have to get a whole lot better and a whole lot faster. Can we surface skills gaps in any individual who has them right now and develop an assessment rubric that employs a system of competency assessment that fits your exact needs, and then conjure up a simulation that allows you to demonstrate and exemplify all your competencies and deficiencies, and then have a highly personalized feedback and scaffolding that addresses all shortcomings in your proficiencies? Can we address the skills gap that learners have, not in 12 months, but in 12 minutes? So introducing SSIX, our proposed solution. So SSIX is a mobile and web-based application that employs 4 key modules: the reflection, the rubric, an AI-based assessment simulation, and a digital twin. These 4 modules essentially replaces the biggest bottleneck in proficiency development and addressing skills gap by doing away with the participation of instructors in the process of needs analysis, development of assessment rubric, assessment development, and scaffolding. By having the entire process automated using AI, we are able to have an extremely specific assessment for targeted assessing of skills gap while being able to scale assessments exponentially. I'll walk you through our solution. So Lionel has shared with you the case of the social worker, Alice, having a challenge with her client, Jane. I will now assume the role of assume the role of Alice and how she might use SSIX to address her skills gap. So essentially, Alice opens up SSIX and the front-facing camera is already turned on, ready for her reflection. She starts the assessment process by pressing the Start Reflection button. To address the skills gap, context of the environment which Alice is working in is needed, as that's where Alice displays her competencies and her deficiencies. It is also what the simulation is seeking to recreate. So Alice starts the reflection, a process which gets the AI to understand what Alice is dealing with at work. So Alice simply looks straight at the camera and speaks exactly what she's dealing with. She might say something like this, like, my client has been in an abusive relationship with her husband for the last 3 years. He often threatens her and on 3 occasions has hit her. They have 2 young children, aged 3 and 1. She is a housewife. The reflection goes on till all pertinent details are shared. And that's it. From this singular action taken by the learner, a series of complex steps are undertaken by a number of AI models to create an entire assessment rubric and a brand new assessment for the learner to test herself. I'll show you how. You see this detail of Jane having lent her sister $1,200, and Jane's husband found out about it and then abused Jane over it, and it also resulted in friction between Jane and her sister. What you're seeing here is a visual representation of a classification and dependency parse of this tiny narrative. So this small narrative here, all right, and it actually generates this dependency parse. So you're seeing how all these separate entities are related to each other, and their relationship and how they are understood matters. You see this extreme right cluster where you can see that the primary individual has lent her $1,200, with her being Jane's sister. So essentially, Jane lent her sister $1,200. Jane did not borrow $1,200 from her sister. If Jane had borrowed money from her sister, this minor detail would make this case incredibly different. It would then suggest that Jane is not only facing domestic violence, but is also undergoing financial difficulties, which would employ a different track of skills and competencies from the social worker. In this case, it is one of domestic violence, but also about sibling relationship between Jane and her sister. The AI needs to understand this, and using this reflection, identify all the competencies that are needed to successfully manage this case and achieving the best outcome for the client. So the next step is the rubric development. The AI will need to surface all the proficiency gaps, essentially clusters of competencies that may not be obviously aligned with other competencies in a usual service delivery framework. It is in these non-obvious links where skills gap reside. As you can see here, this is a 3-dimensional representation of the nodes and clusters of the competencies and their associated data captured from the reflection. We now have these clusters, and what we need next is a way for this to be useful for learners. So we have performed the text analysis, all right, and this generates this model, all right, with the classifications, all right. So using this data, an AI model will analyze the concepts and their relationships against an existing curriculum to identify features, matches, all right, and measure the relevance of concepts to the curriculum. Essentially, we want to know how much of the reflection actually matches what was taught, and how much of it is something new by way of concept relationships. The AI does this to surface concepts that were not covered extensively in the curriculum and assessment, and it identifies them as potential skills gaps. A validation tool then validates all potential skills gaps by comparing them against the service delivery framework before certifying them as skills gaps. So once we have that, the clusters are the next translated into descriptors. These are assessment criteria that provides a measure by which the learner will be assessed upon. AI captures all the pertinent competencies from the clusters and writes them out exactly in the way a domain expert would, describing what skill or knowledge needs to be demonstrated to be considered as meeting expectations for that descriptor. And it will look like something like this on the table on the right. This is a tiny example of a rubric to illustrate our point. There are competencies at the top, and a rating of competent and not yet competent, and then the corresponding descriptors. We now have our rubric that was generated from a 3D representation of the clustering of concepts that was generated from the reflection. Having a rubric in and of itself is not useful unless it's paired with an assessment. SSIX will employ a video-based simulation where the character in the video will be the client, and you will be assessed upon your interaction with her based on the rubric. You would interact with the client exactly as you would in real life. The camera and microphone turns on, and you would ask the question as you would normally ask, or make a suggestion that you would normally make to the client in her situation. And the AI will understand exactly what was said and provide you a video response addressing you. The challenge here, though, is that the reflection you have provided is highly unique, and a pre-existing video simulation will certainly not address the skills gap that may manifest itself uniquely in this scenario. What we need is a highly personalized assessment to match your highly personalized rubric to address your highly personalized skills gap. And with SSIX, we intend to do that. As you saw in step 1, the reflection was then translated into competencies that formed a rubric in step 2. With step 2, all the needs have been surfaced, and we are now ready to generate a video-based simulation assessment. I'll show you how. This involves 4 steps. We utilize a pre-recorded base video, essentially a short video, which will serve as our canvas for our newly generated videos. With the reflection and the rubric using NLP, we will have AI-generated text. So in this case, a dialogue. My sister is the only one who can help me, but she's not willing to help me anymore unless I lend her more money. I'm so afraid of my husband beating me and my children if I lend her any more money. The dialogue did not exist prior to the reflection. If you look back at the reflection, this dialogue does not exist in the reflection either. The AI is able to construct a dialogue based off the reflection and assign a competency descriptor to it so that we know that this dialogue serves a specific assessment utility. Of course, verbal and non-verbal communication is an important aspect in social service work, and we want to maintain authenticity. To recreate the environment that the SSP is working in, we perform a voice cloning of the character in the base video and generate a new speech that verbalizes the AI-generated text. We then utilize GAN to lip sync the clone voice, and the output is a generated video that has assessment utility. All right, so I'll show you very quickly. All right.
My name is Grace Lee.
All right, so this is actually the base video. In the AI-generated video,
my sister is the only one who can help me, but she is not willing to help me anymore unless I lend her more money. I am so afraid of my husband beating me and my children if I lend her any more money.
So this is the generated video. As you can see, the lip syncing is perfect. The voice clone, though, all right, could definitely be better. But we have an extremely tiny sample to work with for this demo. For SSIX, we'll be making audio recordings of about 45 minutes for our base video, allowing us to create a perfect match in speaking style, voice quality, natural sounding intonations, and realistic voice expressions. The output, right, will be virtually indistinguishable from the base video in terms of which one was AI generated. And we use that, we use that, all right, but this is just one video though. An assessment schema adhering to an assessment framework will identify the number of videos that need to be generated and the content that they need to have, and then package them into a coherent assessment simulation that has assessment validity. And all of this happens simultaneously. As you can see here, the assessment schema is packing the videos into a proper narrative flow, as well as identifying all the points in which the assessment takes place, all right, as well as what competency is being assessed. So this provides an opportunity for the learner to demonstrate their skills and competencies, all right, and against the identified skills gap in the simulation. So depending on how you have responded to the scenarios, all right, whether you're competent or not yet competent, the narrative actually flows, all right, logically, all right, all based off the narrative of the assessment schema. So essentially, this entire process, all right, takes less than 12 minutes. every step of the way, we are displaying incredible innovation, from the process of reflections to competencies, to how narrative is translated into a rubric, to the process of creating video assessments with the use of voice cloning and GANs. We are showing a paradigm shift in how learners develop competencies. A learner need only speak, and an entire simulation is born with no human intervention in between. So essentially, all right, there is analytics. We recognize that that how valuable such a mode of assessment will be. The reflections also and the surfacing of skills gap and the impact it has on the learner provides a wealth of data which can be used for achieving better outcomes. Right, so this digital twin provides an opportunity to track employee competencies, gain insight into opportunities and risk, and measure the readiness of work of learners. With this data, better allocation of resources for learning and development can be had. All right, and finally, all right, as Lionel has shared earlier, the efforts required in developing learning products. With SSIX, the contrast is stark. With only input being the reflection, the entire process only takes 12 minutes and will have outcomes far superior than to existing interventions, as SSIX seeks out skills gap in every instance of a reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, team. Thank you, SSIX, for this presentation. Indeed, social work is indeed a difficult job, and like fighting for someone else is rather encapsulating. So it's reinvigorating to learn that there is tech and learning solutions out there to help social workers and show them positives and uplift them. Any questions from the floor? Anybody has any questions to ask? You can also you can turn on your mic or write it in the chat. Otherwise, maybe I'll ask just my personal question, which is that the voice, and I've been like wowed with the voice intonation, and especially if it can like understand and hold a proper conversation, which we believe is rather innovative even for AI to do that. So we all have like these different accents, and there's going to be Singlish, there is going to be people who don't speak English. So how will this tech, is it rather intuitive? Would it learn with us, or you'll have to like train it back in? How would this work?
Yeah, thanks, Nilanjana. So essentially, the cloned voice is actually based off so there are two parts. One is actually the cloning of the voice. So that's actually essentially trying to capture the texture, the voice speaking style. Essentially, you have a unique way of speaking, I have my own way, and everyone else has their own ways of speaking. So that one part, all right, is actually taking about 45 minutes of voice data to actually be able to learn about that particular intonation, the voice quality, the projection, the way, the speaking style, right? So we are able to actually sort of mimic that speaking style. The second part of it, all right, is essentially what is being said with that voice. So that is actually the AI generated text. Now that text, I believe, will be in standard English, essentially because that will form the basis of your assessment. So essentially what is actually happening is the character in the video is your client. So I believe this particular practice will be based in English, but we could actually extend it to other languages as well. I'm pretty sure that social work happens in multiple languages. All right, your client may actually have different profiles, right? They could be Chinese, could be Malay, could be Tamil, all right? And so those languages right now are not supported yet. All right, but we could possibly support that in the future. And so essentially what we're then doing is that generating the AI text and then mapping it to the voice. And then after that, generating this particular video that actually matches up to what is actually needs to be said. Again, the dialogue, all right, serves a particular assessment utility. It's actually to further the assessment. So if let's say, for example, I'm actually sharing that particular narrative to you, it's actually to put you in a situation that I need you to display or exemplify a certain competency, essentially.
Okay. Thank you, Alvinder. Any more questions from the floor? Otherwise, thank you, everyone. We have now come to the end of the presentation segment of innovPlus Winner Circuit. We thank you all for your patience, and a loud applause. You can use the reaction and in the Zoom space for both the participants as well as the winners. Also, we would like to let everyone know that our innovPlus Challenge 2022 applications are now open. We look forward to some exciting learning challenges and innovations. And yes, please spread the word. If you have any questions for us, for the team, you can stay back, you can ask us, or you can email us. Otherwise, and finally, from InLab, we wish you all a great year ahead, and happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.